Good morning, class 12 students. So, this is your subject physics, chapter number 10, that is wave optics, and lecture number 6. So, in previous lecture, we were studying about diffraction. I told you about the diffraction pattern seen and the various conditions for secondary maxima and minimas in diffraction pattern. Okay, so today we will first of all calculate the width of central maxima, and as I told you, the width of central maxima is 2x. Okay, so how can you define width of central maxima? It can be defined as the distance between first secondary minimas on either side. Okay, so as you have calculated yesterday that path difference is a sine lambda, a sine theta, and if I am taking n to be 1, it will be equal to lambda for secondary minimas. Okay, and this is the first secondary minima because n equal to 1 implies first secondary minima. Okay, now and you have derived one more equation, that is sine theta is equals to x by d. Now if you put the value of sine theta into this one, you will get ax by d is equals to lambda. From here x will come to be lambda d by a. Now width of the central band is nothing but 2x. So the width will be 2x, that is 2 lambda d by a. So this is the formula for the width of central band for diffraction pattern. Now if you want to calculate angular width, so theta, this is called half angular width. So you can say 2 theta will be your angular width. Okay, so to calculate angular width, you have to calculate 2 theta. For that, let us assume theta to be very small. So sine theta will become nearly equal to theta. So you can say theta will come to be x by d. So 2 theta will come to be 2x by d. And from this equation, 2x by d will come to be 2 lambda by a. So this is your width of central maxima, and this is your angular width of central band or central maxima for diffraction pattern. Okay, so after that there arises one question. The graph which you have drawn yesterday, you have seen that intensities of secondary maximas in diffraction pattern goes on decreasing. So the question is, why intensities of secondary maximas goes on decreasing in diffraction pattern? Okay, so let us look for the reason. See, when your central maxima was obtained, the light was coming from the whole slit, right? But after that, when your first secondary maxima was obtained, what was happened? We have divided the slit into 3 parts to get first secondary maxima. This I told you yesterday. So when we were dividing the slit into 2 parts, due to first 2 portions, the light was forming a destructive interference. So that means light was coming only from one portion. So, or you can say 1/3 portion of the slit, or you can say 33% of the slit. Right? So in central maxima, the light was coming from whole of the slit, but in your first secondary maxima, the light is coming from 1/3 part of the slit. Now let us talk about second secondary maxima. In that in this you have to divide your slit by 5 parts. So again, from first 2 portions, destructive interference will be there. From other 2 portions, again destructive interference will there. So now from only this part you will get light. That is, this is the 1/5 part of the slit, or you can say 20% part, right? So that means now the part from which the light is coming is again reduced. So therefore the intensity is going on reducing, because in central maxima light is coming from whole slit. After that, for first secondary maxima, light is coming from 1/3 part of slit. After that, for second secondary maxima, light is coming from 1/5 part of slit, and so on. So it will go on decreasing. Okay, so this is the reason why intensity of your secondary maximas goes on decreasing in diffraction pattern. Okay, so now let us discuss some basic differences between your interference pattern and diffraction pattern, as you have studied both of them now. So the first main difference is that for interference, 2 slits were used, but for diffraction pattern, only a single slit is used. The second difference is that all the bright fringes in interference pattern are of same intensity. You have drawn the graph also for this, but intensity of bright bands goes on decreasing in diffraction pattern. Third point is that width of interference fringes may be equal. As you have calculated beta, all the bright fringes were coming of same intensity, same width, that is lambda d by d. But here the width of diffraction bands is always unequal. Okay, and the fourth difference is that intensity of minima in interference pattern is generally 0, but intensity of minima in diffraction pattern is never 0, and it is so because there is always a little light due to the some part of slit. So therefore intensity of minima never becomes 0 in diffraction pattern, but it is 0 in interference pattern. Okay, so the next topic is Fresnel distance. Okay, so the minimum distance a beam can travel before its deviation from the straight light path becomes noticeable is called Fresnel distance. That is, see, when the light is traveling in straight line, and let us say that at a point P it is deviating from its straight line path. So the minimum distance of that light beam which it can travel before its deviation from the straight line path is called Fresnel distance, and we will be calculating a equation for the Fresnel distance, that is for that minimum distance. Okay, now you have to remember this condition for diffraction pattern, which is A is less than lambda, that is your slit width should be less than wavelength of light. Okay, so now here again we are using the same condition, A sin theta is equals to lambda. We are taking n to be 1. Again assuming theta to be very small, theta will come to be lambda by A. Just now I told you that 2 theta is the angular width of central maxima. So theta is nothing but half angular width of your central band. Okay, so now let us suppose the light wave is traveling a distance z. So for traveling a distance z, the half angular width will become z times, that is if it is lambda by A, and if the light is traveling a distance z, then theta will become z times, that is z lambda by A, and this is nothing but half angular width. Okay, so now as I told you, lambda should be greater than A for diffraction. So therefore beam width, that is this one, now this is your beam width, z lambda by A should be greater than A, and this is possible only when your z will be greater than A square by lambda. Just I am cross multiplying it. So this beam width should be greater than A for diffraction to take place, and this will only be possible when your z will be greater than A square by lambda. So you can say A square by lambda is nothing but minimum value of the distance, which is called Fresnel distance. Okay, so ZF is nothing but Fresnel distance, and it is defined as A square by lambda. So remember this formula, it will be used in various questions. Okay, so the next topic is resolving power. So we will be discussing two things for optical instruments. First is resolving power, and second is limit of resolution. So first of all, resolving power is the ability of optical instrument to produce distinct separate images of two close objects. That is, if you have two objects A and B which are lying closely, then the ability of any optical instrument to produce separate images of them is called resolving power. And it was seen that two objects A and B can be just resolved if your central maxima of A falls on first secondary minima of B. That is, the minimum distance between the two objects to be resolved is that central maxima of A should fall on first secondary minima of B. For example, look here, this is nothing but central bright spot for A and B, and this is the first secondary minima of B. So here, as you can see, central maxima of A is falling on your first secondary minima of B. So therefore at this distance they can be resolved. Now if they will lie much more closer to each other, then they cannot be resolved. Okay, so this is the condition for which two objects can be resolved by any optical instrument. Second is limit of resolution. So the limit of resolution is the minimum distance between two objects so that their separate images can be seen by an optical instrument. Okay, so the minimum distance between any two objects so that their different images, or you can say separate images, can be seen by an instrument is called limit of resolution. Okay, so resolving power is the ability of optical instrument and limit of resolution is the minimum distance between the two objects. Okay, so the next topic is polarization of light. So first of all, let us read the definition. So the restriction of vibration of light in a particular direction perpendicular to the direction of wave propagation is called polarization of light. That is, when you have a normal unpolarized light, in that what happens? Vibrations of light are there in every possible direction. But if you restrict the vibrations of light only in one direction, which is perpendicular to the direction of wave propagation, then that is called polarized light. For example, to make it much more clear, see, this is called a unpolarized light because in this light is vibrating in light, or you can say electric vector is vibrating in each and every direction which is possible. Now what we do, if we restrict these vibrations only in this direction, or you can say z-axis, and let us suppose that this light wave is traveling in x-axis. So now you can say that light is vibrating only in one direction which is perpendicular to the direction of propagation of wave. So therefore this now becomes a polarized light, and to make a unpolarized light to polarized light we use a polarizer that I'll tell you later. Okay, so I hope it is clear now what do you mean by a polarized light. Okay, so now look here, again we have taken an unpolarized light in which vibrations are there in every possible direction, and let us suppose the initial intensity is I0. Okay, so then we have used our polarizer. So as I told you, polarizer is a device which gives you polarized light, and generally Nicol prism is used as a polarizer. Okay, so what will happen? See, these lines are the axis of polarizer. Okay, so what is the property of a polarizer? That it will allow all those vibrations of light to pass through it which are parallel to its axis. Okay, I am repeating it once again. The polarizer will allow all those vibrations of light to pass through it which are parallel to its axis. So now as you can clearly see here, only this vibration is parallel to its axis. So it will allow to pass only these vibrations. So what you will get is a polarized light now after passing through a polarizer. After that, we generally use an analyzer, and as the name suggests, analyzer is used to analyze the polarized light. So in this what happens, if your axis of analyzer is parallel to axis of polarizer, as you can see here, both of them have parallel axis. So all this light will pass through the analyzer and you will get the same intensity here which was coming initially on the analyzer. But as you rotate this analyzer in this direction, what will happen? The intensity will go on decreasing, and when a condition will be reached when the axis of analyzer will become perpendicular to the axis of polarizer, in that case there will be no light. Okay, so if they have parallel axis, you will get the same intensity. As you rotate the analyzer, the intensity will go on decreasing, and when the axis of analyzer and polarizer becomes perpendicular, then there will be no light, or you can say there will be zero intensity through our analyzer. Okay, now it was generally seen that after passing through a polarizer, the intensity of the intensity of the final light becomes half of the initial intensity. That is, this I will be equal to I0 by 2. Okay, so next is law of Melis. So according to law of Melis, it was seen that intensity of light after passing through a polarizer, that is I, is directly proportional to cos square theta, where theta is the angle between axis of analyzer and polarizer. Okay, so according to law of Melis, I is directly proportional to cos square theta. To remove this proportionality constant, we use I0, that is your initial intensity. So I is equals to I0 cos square theta is nothing but law of Melis, and you have to remember this remember this equation. Okay, I is equals to I naught cos square theta. Okay students, now I'll discuss the homework solutions of lecture number 5. So 2 questions were given to you, question number 17 and question number 19. Question number 19 is just formula based question, so I hope all of you must have solved it. So I'll be discussing question number 17. So the question number 17 has various parts. So the first part of the question says, in a single slit diffraction experiment, the width of the slit is made double the original width. Then how does this affect the size and intensity of central diffraction band? So here it is given that your width of slit is made twice. Okay, so as you know, 2 theta is the angular width of central band, and you have derived this that 2 theta is 2 lambda by a, right? Now if this slit width is double, that means angular width of the central band will become half. Okay, so this will be the effect on the size of central band. After that, to define the intensity, we must know the formula that intensity in diffraction pattern is directly proportional to square of width. So if your width is doubled, that means your intensity will become 4 times. Okay. After that, B part of the question says, in what way is diffraction from each slit related to interference pattern in a double slit experiment? So as you know, diffraction takes place when your A is less than lambda or they are nearly equal to each other. So therefore, when your width of each slit is become nearly equal to wavelength of light, in that case interference pattern is modified by diffraction pattern from each of the 2 slits. That is, the 2 slits which were initially giving interference pattern, now individually they will be forming diffraction pattern. In C part, it is asking, when a tiny circular obstacle is placed in the path of light from a distant source, a bright spot is seen at the center of the shadow of the obstacle. Explain why. So at center, a bright spot is seen because that diffraction is taking place due to the corners of obstacle, and therefore we are getting a central maxima which appears to be at a bright spot. So you can say at center constructive interference is taking place, due to which we are getting a bright spot. In D part, it is saying 2 students are separated by a 7-meter partition wall in a room 10 meter high. If both light and sound waves are can bend round the corners, how is it that the students are unable to see each other even though they can converse easily? So this is because, see, as you know, sine theta is lambda by a, and the condition for diffraction is that a should be less than lambda, right? Now for light, lambda is nearly equal to 10 to the power minus 7 meters. And the size of aperture is given to you 10 meters in the question already. So from here you know lambda and you know a. So calculate theta from here. So sine theta will come to be nearly 10 to the power minus 8, or you can say theta will nearly come to be 0. So that means if angle of diffraction is coming to be 0, that means there will be no bending, and because there is no bending, therefore the students are not able to see each other. But for sound waves, what happens? Frequency of sound waves is 1000 hertz. So from here you can calculate wavelength. So by using the formula lambda is equals to c by n, wavelength will come to be 0.33 meters, or you can say sine theta will come to be 0.033. Sorry, this is not n, this is nu, that is frequency. Okay, so when you will calculate theta from here, that will be having a definite value. So that means there is an angle of diffraction, that means sound waves will be bending, and therefore the students can converse easily with each other because sound waves are bending through the obstacle, whereas light is not bending. Okay, in last part of the question, it is asked why ray optics. Ray optics is based on the assumption that light travels in a straight line. Diffraction effects disprove this assumption, yet the ray optics assumption is so commonly used in understanding location and several other properties of images in optical instruments. Why? So this is because, again, the same thing, for diffraction there is a condition that size of the aperture should be greater than the wavelength of should be less than the wavelength of light. But generally what happens, your size of aperture is generally greater than wavelength of light. So if this is the general case, that means diffraction will not take place properly. Therefore ray optics is used in understanding location and several other properties. Okay, due to this condition, diffraction does not take place properly.